Hi, I'm Kathryn Costa from TrueNorthArts.com. And this is episode 2 in my Astrology 101 Art Journal series. Now, if you haven't seen the first video, pause this one and look for a link in the description below to go watch that video first. You see, there are 6 videos in this series, and they're designed to be watched in sequence. So go check out that one and then come back here. I designed this series as a fun and creative way to explore the basics in astrology. It's a really complicated topic. There's a lot of details and nuances, and it's so fascinating, and I help to break it down. You might take notes like this. In this series, I'm going to show you how I like to take notes. It looks more like this and this. So to help you to create an art journal where you're taking notes and learning about the basics of astrology, I designed these Zodiac stencils that you can buy directly from Stencil Girl products. These stencils, it makes it so easy to create a Zodiac chart. And we use that chart as a way of exploring those 12 Zodiac signs. Each of those signs, we get to know them from one video to the next, various aspects and qualities and characteristics. And we also explore those relationships of each of those signs. It's a way that we can get to know them and understand them. Now, these signs are qualities that are reflective in us and those that we know. And I can't wait for you to discover what you already know about yourself, but through the lens of astrology. In this video, we're going to explore the classical elements. The first project is to create a zodiac chart for each of those 4 elements of fire, earth, air, and water. The second project is to create a journal page to give you a place to further explore those qualities of each of those elements. Then we're going to connect the dots, taking what we've learned and applying it to ourselves. This is where it gets really interesting. We'll take a look at your natal chart and see which elements are showing up in your chart. So let's take a look at the supplies to have on hand for this project. For the paper, I am using the spiral bound Canson watercolor paper. You can use any heavyweight paper, whether it's for mixed media or watercolor. Since we're using paint, you're going to want a paper that's a heavier weight that can handle the wet medium. And look for a 9x12. For the first project, I use my Zodiac chart stencil that you can buy from Stencil Girl products. For the second project, I used my stencils, also from Stencil Girl products, pictured here, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, the solar plexus chakra, and the throat chakra. Now those are completely optional. You don't need them to be able to do that project, but that is what I'm demoing in this video. For paint, I'm using an inexpensive craft paint. Select a rainbow of colors, so that way you can capture those 4 elements of fire, earth, air, and water. And then to apply the paint, my favorite thing to use are makeup sponges that you can find in the pharmacy or wherever they sell makeup. You're going to see that I use other supplies in addition to these, and I list all of that in the description below with links on where you can buy them. All right, to begin, let's step back and look at that zodiac chart and notice the pattern of how these elements show up in the chart as we progress from the first sign in Aries all the way through the chart to the 12th sign in Pisces. The first sign in the zodiac is Aries, and that is a fire sign, followed by Taurus, an earth sign, Gemini, an air sign, and Cancer, a water sign. As we continue the sequence, we now start again with a fire sign. In this case, it's Leo. We continue with Virgo, an earth sign, Libra, an air sign, Scorpio, a water sign. So what element's going to follow next? You guessed it. It's fire. That sign is in Sagittarius, followed by Capricorn, an earth element, Aquarius, an air element, and Pisces, the water element. Now, in the description below, you will find a link to this stencil reference guide. And you can see that I've color-coded each of the signs, and we can see that pattern of fire, earth, air, and water. So let's take a closer look at each of these elements, starting with the element of fire. Now, in these next clips that I'm about to show you, just sit back and observe the feelings that each one conveys. Fire is the energy of spirit. It's an active force. It animates, it energizes, and it's expressed through action. People with a lot of fire inspire others with their visions. Now, some of the common ways that we express and acknowledge that element of fire in people is when we describe someone as being fiery, or all fired up, or a real firecracker, or a fire starter, or a spitfire, or a hothead. Turning our attention back to the zodiac wheel, the three fire elements, again, are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Now, if you draw a line to connect each of these signs in the wheel, you see a triangle forms. Notice the direction of that top point. It's pointing upward and forward. So I want you to take particular attention to the direction of the triangle that forms when we connect each of the zodiac signs and the elements. In this case, with fire, that triangle is pointing upward and outward. This reflects symbolically our outward focus. All right, I want to remind you of in video 1, we were talking about yin and yang. Well, fire elements are an example of a yang element. And fire is all about taking action, feeling that inspiration from within, and taking action that will move you and propel you forward. This is an example of sacred geometry. Now we can simply connect these dots and draw these lines and form this triangle of 3 equal sides and call it a triangle. But what makes it sacred is that we are noticing a pattern that has meaning for us. That's what sacred geometry is about. Cool is that? Turning now to our journal, this is an example of how the first project looks. The colors that I'm using is the primary red and a couple different yellows, a cadmium yellow and a sunny day yellow. And here are some gold colors that I pulled out of my stash. I've got my makeup sponge and a palette knife for mixing. I'm using a recycled lid from a to-go container to use as my palette. And I'm mixing up some red and yellow to create an orange color. And then I take and I just tap that makeup sponge on there and then tap it onto the stencil. Start with that wedge on the left, filling that in your base color. Maybe even adding a little bit of red to fire it up a bit. Then you're going to count 3, and in that 4th spot, you're going to paint in your next one. Count 3 more, paint in. So there's 3 spaces in between each one. Now, be sure to shake up that paint really well, and then I go back in and I just keep layering the paint. Even if it hasn't fully dried, sometimes it is dried, I just love that look of just layering and mixing. Especially with the fire, we don't want a flat color. We want to connote that feeling of energy and the zestiness. And some of the signs are a little more red, hot, and others bright and sunny. So you can see the second one is a brighter, sunnier one. That's Leo. Now, I'm coloring those spaces in between those 3 with that golden Sahara gold. It's an old paint of mine, so it's a little bit thick and chunky. But, this is an example of working with what you have. You don't have to go buy everything. You can mix and match what you have. And so I'm using up this old paint, and it's a lot of fun. I'm going back, adding some more detail. And then when you pull it off, you can see we've got that. Now, once it's fully dry, I'm going to go in and outline those orange areas with a black alcohol marker. This one happens to be from Arteza, but another really good marker that you could work with is the Sharpie. So I'm getting a nice black line, but you want to make sure your paint is fully dry before you start doing this, or else you're gonna really make a mess and clog up your point. So once you have those all outlined, I then take this bottom part of that stencil with the signs and I trace with a pencil those 3 symbols for Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And then with a white gel pen, I go in and I color that in. I like how that white just is a great contrast against the color. Then here I come back in with a little dot. I wanted to just break up that heavy, thick line. Thought it was a little too heavy. So here I go with my little dots, creating a little pattern. You might come up with another pattern, maybe little dashes, a little, who knows. I'd love to see you experiment with that. Then again, you may want to clean up those lines in case if you're heavy-handed like me, you might end up with some lines that aren't so clean. We can use it like a whiteout to clean up those lines and sharpen up those details. Then I went in with a black fine liner pen. I put a link in the description below on the kind that I'm using here. And I just outline those to just give it a little more definition. And I use that for writing the word fire in the center. There I go again, me and my little dots. Just wanted to finish off that. It looked like it was just kind of bare. So, add a little detail. Then I write in the name of the sign. This one is Aries. And I'm making a note of its quality. It is a cardinal sign. We're going to talk more about these qualities in video number 3. But for now, just make a note of it. In this one, this is Leo. And it is a fixed sign. And then we come to Sagittarius. And it is a mutable sign. And then I took my extra paint and dabbed it around because I liked the way it looks and it kind of conveys that energy of the fire. So I just dabbed and mixed and matched all those different warm colors about. And then to add a little more detail, I took a charcoal pencil and just outlined the symbol just to lift it off the page a little. At the bottom of this page, I drew in those symbols again. Let's take a closer look. I came up with 3 words to describe the essence of each of these signs. Aries is a fire starter, an initiator, a confronter. In contrast, Leo is known for having flair, very jovial, and highly creative. Sagittarius is a lifelong learner, very direct in sharing his or her opinions, and is a freedom seeker. So for the second project, for the fire element, I created a journal page to give me a place for recording more of those qualities and characteristics found in people with that fire element. I designed this to look like a sun, and at the center is the symbol of the solar plexus chakra. To begin this design, I pulled out my solar plexus chakra stencil from Stencil Girl products. Here I'm tracing with a pencil the central part of this design, that downward pointing triangle and that first ring of lotus petals. This is the traditional solar plexus chakra design. And then without any measuring or planning, I just went with a free flow action of drawing these lines to convey that feeling of like the rays of the sun. Now, if you don't have the stencil, it's quite all right. You can draw your own pattern. It can be like the sun or a sunflower. I thought it would be fun for us to make this connection with the solar plexus chakra. I know many of you already have the stencil, and it's a great opportunity to not only take it out and play with it, but also to make a connection with this element. Now here I'm demonstrating the water brush. Water brushes have a barrel within it that you can put water in. And the colors that I'm using are these Art Graph water-soluble chalk paints. And I absolutely love them. I mean, they come in this gorgeous cork pattern. And for anybody who's got a lot of strong earth element within you, oh, you're going to absolutely love these colors. So there's no reason why I'm using a water brush other than I just felt like pulling it out. You can use any brush and then have a bucket of water. It's just really convenient when you have it all right there. So in order to be able to have a wet brush, you just gently squeeze that barrel. It gets the brush wet. It just kind of floods it. And then you just lift off the color, as you can see here, from this block, this color block. And as I color in, you're going to notice a couple of things. One is I lay the color down, and then I go back over it and apply it again. So here I'm going in and I'm just laying an initial color down for all these little petals. Now, this is an expensive set, I gotta tell you. I had sticker shock when I bought it, but it was a real treat. And I have to tell you, I think this is going to last me my entire life because I don't use it all that often, but you know, when I do, I just absolutely love it. I think this is gonna be, a little bit goes a long way and it's gonna last me a long time. You see, I'm going in now and I'm just loading up and coloring in and just playing with the color. And just, I love the way the brush feels on the paper and letting it in. So here you see me going back in again, and you see my second application, it comes in much darker. So it's fun to play and experiment with different materials to see the kind of effects you get. And to provide some contrast with that golden color, I applied some of the sanguine. I love that word, sanguine, from this Art Graph set. And once it's dry, you can go in and add details in journal writing. Here I'm using an ordinary colored ballpoint pen. This is a brown ballpoint pen from, I think it's a Papermate Inkjoy, but I've got a link for that also in the list below. So within each ray, I write in a different word that expresses a quality found in one or more of these fire signs. The first word is enthusiasm. And you can see my writing styles. I just draw the letters in and then I go and I outline them. And then I go back a third time, a third pass, and I color it in. And that's how I do my lettering. I'm not a fancy letterist. I have a good friend who is a professional calligrapher, or modern day calligrapher. All right, so these are my words: enthusiasm, passionate, colorful, flair, bold, outspoken, independent, loves to laugh, loves change and travel, has high energy, intense, inspirational. Oh, and we're getting back to the top, enthusiasm. Moving now on to the second element of Earth. Sit back and watch these clips and notice a very different feeling and energy in them. Earth is the energy of the body. It refers to our physical body, the material world. It expresses through mastering the world, actualizing your dreams and your survival skills. So some common expressions to describe earthy people. We may say that they're down to earth or salt of the earth. We may have their feet planted on the ground. If someone is reliable and you can count on them, you may refer to him as your rock. Or if someone has got maybe too much earth going on, they may be a stick in the mud. Looking at the zodiac chart, we see that the earth elements follow the fire element. And when we draw a line to connect these three zodiac symbols, the Taurus, the Virgo, and the Capricorn, we have a triangle that is pointing upward. When we looked at the triangle for the fire elements, we saw that it was pointing upward, but had that forward motion. It reflects that action. In contrast, the triangle for the earth element, notice the base of it. It's lying flat. It is solid. This reflects that earthy nature of being down to earth, being very grounded, very practical. For my zodiac chart that reflects the elements of earth, I was inspired by the color green that we experience when walking through a forest. And I used the same Sahara gold that I had used in the fire chart for the spaces in between these three zodiac signs in this wheel. The first zodiac sign is the Taurus, and it is a fixed sign. I used a white gel pen to color in the symbol, and then I outlined it with a black fine liner pen. But instead of using the charcoal pencil, I used a green colored pencil to create that shadowed effect. The second earth sign is Virgo, and it is a mutable sign. And the third is Capricorn, and it is a cardinal sign. The three characteristics that I chose for Taurus is practical, slow and steady, and musical. Virgo is analytical, serving, and she's the high priestess of the zodiac. You see, she's in tune with those seasons and those cycles within nature. That's her analytical side coming to play. And Capricorn is ambitious, a leader, and tends to be conservative. Here's a look at my second journal page for the earth element. And here you can see a very creative way of making a list of those qualities and characteristics of the people who have these earth signs. So I pulled out my root chakra stencil to use for this project. The root chakra relates to the earth element. Doesn't get any more earthier than that. And you can see closing in on this design. I wanted to point out that I drew and traced again just that central design from the stencil, where you have that downward pointing triangle, a square, and 4 petals. Then I just drew some lines going down, just in a free-flowing way, and colored everything in, again, using this gorgeous palette of colors, the sanguine, the charcoal, and some of the other earthy colors that I picked up from the palette. I also augmented and complemented those chalks with some colored pencils. So some of those lines are filled in with that. And then I pulled out my white gel pen, bringing in that dot motif again, the little pathways, the little dotted paths to fill in. Now, when I put those lines going down, I was really thinking of it as roots, but it kind of looks more like a dream catcher. Either way, I really love the results. Here, I'm showing you how I used a white charcoal pencil for doing that highlighting. So you can see in some spots, I used the black charcoal, and other cases, a white charcoal pencil. Down to earth, practical, slow and simple, stable, quality, a planner, solid, loves lists, perfectionism, excellence, trustworthy, critical, schedules, timetables, a manifester, very good manifester, research, results-oriented, consistent, loves nature. So does that sound like you? Are you an earthy person? Take a moment now to just pause this video and leave a comment below. How do you describe people who are earthy? Maybe there's somebody you know who has that earth element. I'd love to hear. Now, moving on to the next element is air. Take a moment now to sit back and relax. Watch these next clips that reflect the quality of air. Air is the energy of the mind. It is the realm of thoughts and ideas. It expresses the energy of the breath and expressed through communication. Common expressions that we may use to describe someone with an air element may be that they're an airhead, that they have this scattered thinking, that they're a breath of fresh air, bringing in new insights or different perspectives on something. Air is the third element in the zodiac chart that follows the earth sign. Now, when we draw a line to connect these three zodiac signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, notice that the triangle is pointing upward and to the left, in contrast to the fire that was upward but pointing to the right. So the air element and the fire element are both examples of yang energy, that outward focus, where the triangle for the fire is pointing to the right, and that denotes that action, that movement, right? Getting yourself moving forward. The triangle for the air element is pointing to the left. And here, that is indicating how one looks within and uses thoughts and cognitive thinking and ideas for creating those goals and working through objectives and planning. Now, you might be asking, well, there's the earth element and it's got an upward pointing triangle. Is that also an example of yang? So that's a little tricky there. There's the difference here is that the triangle has got a really flat bottom. So there isn't the movement outward. It's not moving outward in one way or the other. It is really solid. It's really holding its place. It's down to earth. It is very grounded. It is an example of yin energy. Think Mother Earth, Pachamama, that womb, that fertile ground of which things grow from. That's yin. Okay, turning our attention back to the element of air and my art journal. I used silver paint to color in the areas for the three zodiac signs, and then a light blue paint for the spaces in between. You'll see that I colored with a blue colored pencil to kind of offset that blue sky around the areas where we see those wedges for the signs. I also used a charcoal pencil for adding some depth and shading within those silver shapes. The first sign is Gemini, and it is a mutable sign. The second one is Libra, and it is a cardinal sign. And the third is Aquarius, and it's a fixed sign. Gemini is known for being chatty, intellectual, speedy, and adaptable. Libra is the harmonizer, the diplomat, loves justice, and a romantic. Aquarius is the eccentric, humanitarian, friendly, intellectual, and independent. And here's a look at the facing page in my journal of the creative way that I took some notes about the qualities found in air signs. I started by pulling out the throat chakra stencil and tracing that central design, filling it in with silver and light blue, and then drew in these fun little clouds. So the realm of the mind, the intellectual, clarity and thing they're thinking. They're communicators. They may have a gift of gab, oral, written, visual, witty, humorous. They find words easily and they may finish people's sentences. They're curious and have a love for learning and research. They're observers. There's the harmony and the independence. Maybe scattered in their thinking, charming, easily bored. Yeah, those are just some of the qualities in air signs. Now remember, not all of those qualities are true of everybody with the sign. All right, so you may think of some other qualities that you know. Air might be something that's strong in you or in a loved one. So pause the video and share. You can share as many comments as you want. I love hearing from you. Moving right along now to the element, the last and the fourth element of water. We're going to begin by looking at a few clips that show different aspects, different states of water. Notice the feeling in each one. Water is the energy and power of the unconscious that motivates us. It's expressed through feelings, compassion, and intuitive awareness. Just as there are so many different states of water, there's also a lot of different ways that we may express how we see that water element in another person. So take, for example, there is the ice. Well, someone might be referred to as an ice queen or frigid if they're not in touch with their feelings. Another way is if someone is overrun with feelings, they may be flooded with emotion. And another may be that they go with the flow. Someone who's really in touch with their emotions and not emotionally hijacked, they know how to go with the flow. These are just 3 examples. You may have some others that come to mind, and I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Water is the 4th element that fills in our zodiac chart. And when we connect these 3 zodiac signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, we have a downward pointing triangle. So you probably guessed it, the water element is yin energy. Oh, very, very yin, so feminine. And that downward pointing triangle points to where we find the wisdom of this element. And that is looking within in that subconscious, the area that is not in the cognitive realm. All right? That cognitive realm of the way our society typically celebrates and expects us to navigate through logic and reason, that happens in the realm of the fire and the air. But it's the yin, the earth, and the water where we access this other intelligence. And for the water elements, they really access that wisdom through emotions, through feeling. All right, so when tears start coming up, it's usually an indication to pay attention to something that we've been ignoring, and that inner wisdom is coming and saying, hey, I need your attention. And it's not speaking to us in words because it's not cognitive. It speaks differently. We can also access it through our intuition. This is when we talk about the feminine intuition, a woman's intuition. This is part of that water element. So of the signs, water elements have this capacity to be very psychic. Not all of them, but many of them do. So here's my zodiac chart to express the element of water, naturally working with blue tones. Notice in the spaces between where the zodiac signs are, I just kept layering on paint and building it up. I really liked that effect, almost like an ocean spray. The first element is Cancer, and it is a cardinal sign. The second is Scorpio. It is a fixed sign. And the third is Pisces, and that's a mutable sign. Those with the sign in Cancer tend to be nurturing, emotional, sentimental, and loyal. Scorpions are also very loyal. They have intense emotions. They're about transformation and sexuality and are drawn to the occult. Pisces, that's the dreamer. They're artistic, they're mystical, and highly sensitive people. And here's a look at my journal page for the water element. I used the Sacral Chakra stencil, and at the top you can see I started off by drawing that. The Sacral Chakra has that crescent moon which reflects that element of water. And I drew in some waves and colored those, painted those in. Characteristics of the water element include being emotional, moody, a nurturer, nostalgic, caring, loyal, perceptive, receptive, psychic. And someone with too much water can drown in emotions. Too little water can be out of touch with their feelings. But they tend to be highly sensitive people. Are you ready to connect the dots and see how these elements show up in your chart? Let's take a look at that together. So if you don't have a copy of your natal chart, you can head on over to astro.com to get a free chart. To the left of the big circle, your zodiac chart, is a rectangular box. And on the left, you'll see the rows are listed, FAEW, for fire, air, earth, and water. So total up everything in each row. You're going to count the planets, the sun, the moon, the AC, the MC, but don't include these two symbols. The one on the left is your true node, and the other one is Chiron. In the example here, you can see how those both show up in that first row, giving me a total for fire as 3, 1 for air, 5 for earth, and 3 for water. Now, not everyone includes the AC and the MC because they're not planets, but I do. Now, there are actually points in the chart that have a great significance and a huge influence in who we are. And what we're looking at is my chart as an example. Looking at my chart here in the second row for air, there are no planets in that element. So I want to emphasize here, if you have an element and there are no planets in it, I don't want you to feel like there's something missing, that you're somehow lacking. There's no right or wrong in how this plays out. What it shows is where your natural strengths are, but it isn't always so black and white. Let's take me for an example. I don't have any planets in air. But if you look at Earth, I have 5 things there. And if you look, some of them are planets. We've got a moon. We also have the AC. All of those are in the same sign. It's the sign of Virgo. And when you look up what is Virgo's keyword, I analyze. Virgos are very analytical. That's very mental. It's very thinking. They're different than the air elements because they're very grounded, very practical in their thinking. We're not airheads. We're not scattershots. So here's an example of that. I have so much in Virgo that I can't imagine what it would be like if I had other planets in the sign, in the element of air. I'm already covered. So you may uncover in your chart that, oh, well, I don't need it because I have so much of this. Maybe you don't have that, but you have other skills and gifts and talents. Maybe it's an area that you want to develop. Just because you were born with a certain tendencies for things in a natural way, it does not mean that you are without the power to choose for yourself and say, this is something I want to work on. Or I'm going to hire somebody. I'm going to team up with somebody. I'm going to look for a job where I'm on a team where I can bring these skills to the table, but other people handle other aspects. It might guide you in being attracted to somebody who's opposite of you, or maybe finding other people who are going to complement. You never know. This is all for you to explore. And your story is going to be different than somebody else's story because no two people are exactly alike. It's true. It's true. All right, well, actually, I do have for my chart, you can see I do have the MC listed there. And the MC is not a celestial body. It's not a planet. It's actually a position on your chart. And it is significant. And let me tell you where it is on mine. That is in the sign of Gemini. And Geminis are chatty. They're communicators. They love to talk and share information. They usually have this silver tongue and a gift for gab and tend to be in the communication field, whether they're writers, teachers. Yeah. It's quite clear that I have that Gemini aspect to me, and because of that personal experience, I say we include it in the chart. I wouldn't omit it because it really says a lot. It adds more information to that elemental aspect. Now, I am so curious to hear about what has shown up in your chart. Go get your chart, tally it up in the comments below. I want to know how much fire, air, earth, and water you have. Which one's most dominant? Where do you feel you're in your element? All right, it's an expression you've heard before. It has to do with this astrology thing. When do you feel like you're in your element? I know for me, that Gemini aspect of me loves getting on here and sharing with you what I know. And I love to hear about what's going on for you. So do leave me a comment. I'm curious to know not only what did your chart say, but does that resonate? Does that ring true for you? Would you say, yeah, you know what? I do see these elements in me. And I see them in my work life, or I see them in my home life. I'm so curious. Please, 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 please. I want to hear from you. Hook me up, hook me up. Here's your homework. Number 1, leave me a comment. Look at your chart. What are your elements? Does it resonate with you? 2, open up your journal and get playing. Go make those charts for each of the elements and go make a fun, beautiful page for taking notes about those qualities. Then, I want to see what you're doing. Join me over on my super secret private Facebook page called The Oasis. Now, the only way that you are going to be able to access it, it's by invitation only for people who are subscribed to my email newsletter, or if you've subscribed to this Astrology Astro 101, you get an invitation to join. If you didn't see that email or you're not sure how to access that, shoot me an email at Kathryn at 100mandalas.com and I will send you a link on how you can request to join that group. Coming up in the third video, we're going to take a look at those finer distinctions, the qualities of cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. We're going to use that as a moment for us to recap that connection of the yin and yang, the elements, and those qualities. And so that way, if you look at any one sign and you see what those 3 aspects are, you get a really good solid foundation. You're like, you know what that sign's about. So you realize that not all fire signs are the same, or not all earth signs are the same, or all water signs. We're going to get into a little more of the details there. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Kathryn Costa, instigator of soulful and creative living at TrueNorthArts.com.